Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. Today we're getting into all things vitamin D um, and bone health.
It's something that I think a lot of us hear about, growing up, like drink your milk, get some sunshine,
Right.
and you'll have strong bones. But when we actually like dig into the research, it gets a lot more complicated than that.
It does.
So that's what we're going to do today.
Yeah.
And to help us unpack all of this, we have a great guest expert with us today.
Thank you for having me.
So, I think we all kind of have this basic understanding that like vitamin D is important for our bones.
hmm
But I think it gets a little fuzzy for a lot of us when we actually try to understand what it's doing.
What is it about vitamin D that actually makes our bones stronger? It's not like,
Yeah.
it's not like it's magically like building bone.
Right. It's not the bricks themselves.
Yeah.
It's more like the mortar that helps everything
Hope
get
so.
together.
Okay.
And so it's really about how your body utilizes calcium,
Okay.
which is that main mineral that we need for building and maintaining bone density.
So vitamin D is kind of like the facilitator
Yeah.
in that process. It
Yeah.
makes sure that the calcium can actually get to where it needs to go.
Exactly. So without enough of it, your body it can't absorb the calcium effectively,
Oh, wow.
which long term, that's not great for your bones. It's like trying to build a house without enough mortar. It just won't hold up.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. So I'm curious about how this actually plays out on like a molecular level. Like,
Right.
how does vitamin D impact this calcium absorption?
So one thing that's important to realize is that vitamin D, it's not directly absorbed into your bloodstream in its active form, whether it comes from sunlight or from food or from supplements. It actually has to go through a few transformations to become active.
So you can't just like eat a bunch of cheese and then like, it's good.
Not quite, although I wish it were that easy.
Yeah, right.
It's a two-step process. So first, vitamin D is metabolized in your liver,
Okay.
and then it goes through further processing in your kidneys.
Oh, wow.
And then this transformed active vitamin D that then travels to your intestines.
Okay.
And that's where the real magic happens with the calcium absorption.
So it's like a cross-country road trip for the vitamin D to get to where it needs to go.
It is. It is. And then once it's there, that active form, it binds to specific receptors within the cells that line your intestines.
And this binding action, it's like a key fitting into a lock.
Okay.
It triggers this whole cascade of events that basically tells those cells to increase their production of these specialized proteins that can bind to calcium.
Oh, so it's telling those cells how to absorb the calcium best.
Exactly. So those calcium binding proteins, they're really essential for making sure that you can actually absorb that calcium effectively.
So there's a lot more going on than just, drinking a glass of milk.
Yeah.
It's pretty complicated down there.
A lot of biochemistry happening behind the scenes.
It's pretty amazing, though, when you think about it.
Yeah.
And it actually gets even more intricate when we start looking at the specific ways that vitamin D contributes to bone formation.
And maintenance. Because it's not just about absorbing the calcium. It plays a role in how our bodies actually like build and remodel the bone tissue. So tell me, what's going on inside our bones with vitamin D?
Well, there are three main mechanisms we should probably discuss.
All right, lay 'em on me. Let's do it.
Okay, so three main mechanisms of vitamin D in our bones. Let's hear it.
All right. So first of all, vitamin D actually directly influences the activity of those bone-building cells we were talking about earlier, those osteoblasts.
Okay.
It gives them a boost, making sure they're producing enough of the proteins that they need to form that new bone tissue.
So it's like their personal trainer.
Yeah, you could say that.
All right, cool.
And then on the flip side, vitamin D also plays a role in regulating the activity of osteoclasts.
What?
Osteoclasts, yeah, they're the cells that are responsible for breaking down old bone.
Oh, okay.
Which might sound counterintuitive, but it's actually a really important part of maintaining healthy bones.
Right, so it's like they're clearing out the old to make way for the new.
Exactly, yeah, like a demolition crew.
Okay, got it.
But we need to keep those osteoclasts in check.
Okay.
And that's where vitamin D comes in. It helps make sure that bone breakdown isn't happening faster than bone formation.
Right.
Basically, it's modulating the signaling pathways that are controlling those osteoclasts.
So it's really like a balancing act
It is. It is a very delicate dance.
between the building up and the breaking down.
Yeah, and vitamin D is like the choreographer, making sure everything's running smoothly.
Okay, cool.
And this kind of brings us to the third mechanism, which we touched upon a little bit earlier, and that's bone remodeling. This is that continuous process where old bone tissue is removed and replaced with new bone.
And so it's like our bones are constantly under renovation.
Exactly, yeah. It's a home renovation project that never really ends.
And vitamin D is involved in this too.
Yeah, it plays a really crucial role, especially as we age. Over time, our bones naturally become a little less dense,
Yeah.
more prone to fractures.
Right.
Vitamin D helps to counteract that by making sure there's enough calcium available and that bone remodeling is happening efficiently,
Okay.
which helps to strengthen the existing bone structure.
Wow. So vitamin D really is kind of like a multitasker
Yeah.
when it comes to bone health.
Yeah, it does a lot.
It helps us absorb the calcium. It regulates the bone cell activity. It even helps with like the ongoing renovations.
It's very versatile.
Yeah. That's amazing. So we've talked a lot about, how vitamin D is absorbed, how it's involved in this, bone formation, the maintenance. But I think the big question that probably a lot of people have listening is, like, do vitamin D supplements actually work?
Yeah.
Because, you see so much research out there. Some of it says yes, some of it says no. It's really confusing.
Yeah, I can understand why people are confused. It's a good question.
So what's with all these like conflicting findings?
Yeah, well, it's not unusual for research to have, slightly different outcomes, conflicting outcomes, especially when we're talking about something as complex as human biology and, how our bodies respond to different things.
Right.
And so one thing that always kind of comes into play when you're looking at research like this is thinking about study design.
Okay.
Because, you could have different studies that use slightly different populations or different dosages of vitamin D that they're giving, or even just different ways of measuring bone health.
Okay.
And all of those things can affect the outcome.
That makes sense. So it's not always a totally like-for-like comparison.
Exactly.
Between all these different studies.
Yeah, and it makes it hard to draw really firm conclusions.
Right. I mean, have there been like large-scale studies on this?
There have. There was one particularly interesting study with over 30,000 participants.
Oh, wow.
And they found that taking vitamin D supplements, especially in combination with calcium, it did actually lead to a modest increase in bone mineral density.
Okay.
Particularly in people who were already deficient in vitamin D.
Okay, so that makes sense. If you're deficient, then supplementation would help.
Exactly.
But I guess like the bigger question is, does that actually lead to like fewer fractures?
Right. That's really what we want to know.
Yeah.
And that's where, unfortunately, it's not quite as clear cut.
Oh, okay.
Some studies have shown a correlation between vitamin D supplementation and a lower risk of fractures, but other studies haven't found a statistically significant link.
So, I mean, what are we supposed to do with that information? Should we be taking supplements? Should we not?
It's tough, right? Because it would be great to have a really simple answer. But I think the main takeaway here is that vitamin D it's one piece of the puzzle.
Okay.
When it comes to bone health.
Okay.
There are so many other factors at play, like your age, your existing health conditions, your diet, how much sunlight you're getting.
Yeah.
All of these things can influence how much vitamin D you need and how your body's going to respond to it.
So it really speaks to the need for like that personalized approach.
Absolutely. It's not one size fits all.
Yeah.
And, if you're concerned about your bone health, if you're concerned about your vitamin D levels, the best thing you can do is talk to your doctor.
Okay.
They can order a simple blood test.
Right.
Check your levels, and then you can work together to come up with a plan that makes sense for you.
And they can look at all those other factors that you talked about. Like, are you getting enough calcium in other ways?
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, that's great advice. It's so easy to get caught up in, the idea of like supplements are the answer to everything.
Oh, yeah.
But it's not always the case.
Supplements definitely have their place, but it's not as simple as just popping a pill and assuming everything's going to be fine.
Right.
And it's also important to remember that more is not always better when it comes to vitamin D.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Excessively high levels can actually be detrimental to bone health over time.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize that.
Yeah. We were talking about those osteoclasts, the cells that break down bone.
Yeah.
If you have too much vitamin D, it can actually stimulate their activity too much.
Oh, wow.
And that can lead to a net loss of bone density.
So it's about balance.
It really is all about balance.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, this has been super interesting. I've learned a lot about vitamin D today and its role in bone health.
Me too.
We started out talking about how vitamin D helps us absorb calcium.
Yeah.
And then we went into those more complex roles that it plays in our bodies, with like bone formation, bone maintenance. We even talked about supplements and whether they work, whether they don't.
Right. Lots to consider.
It's a really fascinating topic.
It is.
So I want to thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing your expertise with us.
It was my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And to everyone listening, we hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the world of vitamin D and bone health. And remember, if you have any concerns about your own bone health or your vitamin D levels, it's always better to talk to your doctor to get that personalized advice. Thanks for listening, everybody.